What is up, all my Nexus family? It is your host, Dr. Daniel Kimbley, and you are tuned into yet another episode of the Nexus Podcast. And on this week's episode of the podcast, I am going to share something with you that I talked about last week. I kind of alluded to it, but I really wanted to dive deep into it because I feel like it's important. And realistically, I'm just going to give you my intentions up front, is that I love seeing people radically transform their lives. There's nothing that brings me more joy than helping someone do something that they never believed was possible for their lives. And I've seen this so many times with the kids and the adults and the moms and the family members that we take care of inside of our office because of the brain-based chiropractic care that we so get the privilege to provide to the community. And really what this is all about for me, what it's all about for us, is like uplifting our community to the highest level possible. Because what I know and what I believe to be true in my heart, and the reason that I live in a chiropractic world, in a vitalistic world, in a world that honors our body's ability, our innate ability to be healthy at 100% all the time, is that I know people who have brains that are more on fire, that are more tuned up, that are more clear, are going to make better decisions, and it's going to allow us to live in a more uplifted, in a more positive, in a more healthy, in a more spiritually connected world. And this is really what I care about. And this is why I love providing care for the people that we provide care to. Yes, I love seeing people out of pain. Yes, I love seeing kids not being told they would never be able to read, start to read. Yes, I love seeing parents who told their kids we're going to have autism later in life be completely corrected, where they're expressing life at 100% again. Yes, I love seeing these transformations that we see with people inside of their lives every single day. But the reason that I love it is not because it has anything to do with me, but it has to do with our community and the world that my daughter gets to live in, the world that my daughter gets to be raised in. And I get so passionate about it. And so what I wanted to share with you is something that I alluded to last week on the episode of the podcast when I talked about this idea of time. And one of the things I mentioned in there is that oftentimes I'll see people who are like, I don't have time right now, or I can't afford it right now, but I'll do it, I'll come back and I'll do it later. And my question, and the thing I've really been thinking about, is this idea of like, so many people say, well, I can't afford to do that, or I can't do that, or there's a cost to doing it. And I'm not just talking about finances, right? I'm talking about like your passion in life and people being able to take risks and people being able to go all in on the things that they love. And what I know to be true is that there's also a cost to not doing something. And so the reason I ask is like, the question that really comes up is this question of, can you afford to not do it? Like, what's your life going to look like if you don't do it? And so many times, so many stories, so many things happen inside of my practice that my heart bleeds and my heart aches for some of the people that we get the potential possibility to take care of and they opt out. And this isn't good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just me sharing with you a thought process to make a decision that's going to allow you to live your life at a higher level. Because I see so many people who tell me something like, well, I just can't do that right now because what if I fail? And the question is like, you can't afford to not do it. If you're feeling stuck and you're feeling a lack of purpose and you're feeling a lack of passion and you're feeling a lack of connection and you're feeling burnt out, like, how much longer can you afford to go on that way? And what's the cost that it's costing you inside of your life to continue to function at a certain level, or continue to feel at a certain level, or continue to think at a certain level? And so often what I know is like, people never ask the question of like, what's the cost of me not doing this thing? Like, what's going to happen if I don't do this thing? And so the best example I could give you is I just think about, there's one dad in particular who came into our office and just lots of low back pain, lots of shoulder stuff. They've been modifying their workouts. And this particular person really wanted to be able to pick up and play with their kids and just couldn't do it. And so I hear this story so many times, and like, the reality is that this person decided not to get under care. Like, they couldn't do it. It took too much time. It was going to be too expensive. Like, all of these things, right? And the reality is like, I'm looking at it and going, what's the cost? Like, what's it going to cost you in terms of that relationship with your kid? What's it going to cost you in terms of relationship with your life? What's it going to cost you in terms of the lost productivity that you're going to have? What's it going to cost you for the fact that you can't lift weights up over your heads? Like, what's going to happen if you're 50 now and then you go to 65, 70, 75, 80 and you haven't lifted anything over your head? Do you think that someday you're just going to magically be able to lift stuff over your head? And every single day that you wait, every single day that you postpone do the things that you know you're supposed to do, like, it's going to make it that much more difficult to come back. And so many times I see people who make these decisions out of fear of like, well, what's going to happen if I do this? Like I could lose money, or maybe I won't get results, or maybe my bank account's going to look a little bit different, or somebody's going to judge me because they told me that chiropractors are quacks, and yet I trusted this guy who, told me a different story of chiropractic that I never heard before. Like these are all just stories, right? And they're stories that we tell ourselves to keep ourselves trapped, to keep ourselves in the same situation because we're more comfortable being complacent than we are actually stepping out and doing something that could actually radically transform our lives. So my question is like, what's going to happen if you don't do it? Like what's going to happen for this dad that I mentioned? Like what's going to happen if he doesn't step into our office? Like what's it going to look like for him, when his kids aren't 5 and 6 anymore and his kids are like 15, 16 and they want to throw a softball with him, or they want him to go, to the bounce trampoline house? Like, is he going to be able to do those things? And I wonder like, what strain does that put on his relationship that he could easily take care of now? And the other question is like, how much more difficult is it going to be later to come back from the things that he's already suffering with? And the same is true in any aspect of your life. And the reason that I bring this up is because it's not just about pain, right? It's not just about your physical body, but what about in terms of the way that you think? What about in the way that you, in terms of the way that you address your emotional states and the stress that you have inside of your life? One of my favorite stories of practicing, all-time favorite stories. Like we've seen so many miraculous things happen inside of our practice because people have trusted us with their brain to get their brain functioning at 100%. And we do that through movement of the joints of the spine. But one of my favorite stories is we had this mom come into us. She had her son under care for a long time, and then she finally decided, you know what, like there's something happening with him that has completely transformed his entire life. I want to experience that for myself. And so she starts to come in for care. And as she starts to come in, she sits down with me at a reassessment. And she had tears in her eyes. She's like, Dr. Daniel, I just got to tell you that I have never experienced something like this before. And she's like, when I was a kid, I used to hear my dad yell at me, and I promised myself through my entire life that if I ever had kids, I would not yell at my kids the same way that my dad did. And she said, I have these kiddos, and sometimes I would catch myself in all the stress of getting them from point A to point B, and finances and houses and moves and renovations and businesses and like all the stuff that this family did. She's like, I would find myself in those times of high stress like yelling at my kids. And she's like, it was heartbreaking to me because I would hear myself saying like, when I was a little girl, that I would never yell at my kids like my dad did. And now here I am doing the exact same thing that he did to my kiddos. And she said, since I started coming here, this is the best part of it. It's literally like magical, and it makes me so happy and so filled with joy and so grateful to be able to have the honor to take care of this person and her family, is that she said, I haven't done that to my kids since I started coming here. I haven't even felt the urge to yell at them like that. Why? Because we've allowed her body to deal with stress in a different way. And for her, like these are the kind of questions that I'm asking, right? Like what's going to happen if you don't? Like what would it look like for those kids if mom had continued to be stressed out? What would it look like for her kid if she would have continued to just let him have the digestive issues and the behavioral issues that he was having? Like what's going to happen if you don't is so much greater than what could potentially happen if you do. And so like there's this idea, right, of going all in on yourself. And really what it comes down to is looking at yourself as your highest form of investment. Like you are the best investment that you could possibly make. Not in your 401k, not in your savings account, not into cars or watches or whatever it else is that you like to collect, not in gold, not in crypto. You are your most valuable asset. You are your most important investment. And my question for you is like, what is going to happen if you don't invest in yourself? What does life look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? I know I see so many people, like my family members, guilty or victims of this, right? And not even victims because they did it to themselves, but like 60, 65, 70 years old, still young, like 30 years of life left, and having to live in a facility where someone else takes care of them because of the things that they didn't do today. And my question for you is this, is like, what is it a job, right? Like, it doesn't have to be just chiropractic care. I believe that is the number one thing that's going to unlock your brain to allow you to change your life. But beyond that, like, is it a job that you need to let go of? Is it a relationship that you need to let go of? Is it some thought process, or is it physical weight, or is it a workout that you've been putting off, or is it a conversation that you've been putting off, or is it a hug that you've been putting off, or is it an email? Like, what are the things inside of your life? Like, what is it costing you that you haven't done those things? And my encouragement would be to just start doing them, because what I can tell you is that when you're uncomfortable, you're actually growing. And when you're uncomfortable, as you grow, you will continue to get more comfortable and your body will express itself at a higher level, because if you're stuck in a stressed out state, you cannot express health. And this is what we're about in our office, is literally transforming lives, transforming generations, transforming the community we live in, because I know 100% that with a healthy brain and nervous system, that there is more to be had inside of life, that it will feel more comfortable to take risks, that you will be able to express purpose better, that you will be more productive. And my friends, I just want to ask you one last time, in your life, like, what's going to happen if you don't? I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you got some value out of this episode. Do me one of two things. One, leave me a rating. Two, leave a review, and I will come at you again next week. Peace.